Linux Mint Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. 3 different desktop environments for different people, for different applications, for different hardware. Let's have a look at some of the basic differences on the surface and what it might mean to you. Let's start with the Cinnamon edition 19.3. Of course, this is the beta, and hopefully the stable edition's out before 2020 arrives. If we look at the Cinnamon menu, you can see our power and system shortcuts directly above us, and here's our favourites. We can add to our favourites by just dragging and dropping over to the left there. And if we bring the mouse down near the bottom, that'll start scrolling. There's our favourites that we've just added, and same up the top, we can scroll up there. If we don't, or we can use the mouse wheel. If we no longer want them, we can just drag these back out into the menu. There's no dragging to the desktop, so if you want to put something on the desktop, you'll need to right click it and go add to the desktop, and the same for the panel. There's also auto scroll, so you bring the mouse down near the bottom and that'll just scroll through all the applications. And if you lower the mouse down a little bit further, it'll scroll through faster and faster. Or same thing up near the top here, similar effect. To give you an idea of the system resources that are required to run this, I've installed HTOP. Of course, this is a virtual machine, and all 3 of these examples I'm giving here are in virtual machines with 2 cores shown here as 1 and 2, 8 gigs of memory, and 30 gigabyte hard drives. So we can see Cinnamon's currently using very little. If I hold the mouse still there for a moment, so it hovers down pretty low. You can see down here 639 megabytes of memory. So for those that are interested or concerned about that, I'll just leave that up there while I go through the rest of the demonstration, and you can monitor that on your own. As you can see, the system monitor is running now as well, and the CPU usage has gone up to around 40%, nearly half of our CPUs being used just to examine the system or just to monitor the system. And we can also see quite a disparity. It's showing 900 megabytes of memory used on the system monitor, but only 650 on the HTOP application. You'll see I'll minimise the system monitor. You'll watch the usage drop back to something similar to what it was earlier. There we go, down to very low percentages there. So it's just using all that grunt to actually monitor and to display that on the desktop. You'll watch it start to spike here in a moment. As quantum physicists say, looking alters the outcome. We'll have a look at some of the system settings. You can see there's quite a number of little modules in here to configure your system with. We're not going to go through them all, we're just going to have a bit of a basic look. For example, if we go to themes, and now with a couple of clicks we can change, for example here, the window border. We can go to a dark window border, like what I've done there, or we can change it back. Same with our icons. Pretty slick little operation they've got going here. There's a couple of extra choices across the top you can add and remove, change some of the settings, and you'll find that pretty much across the board when you dive into most of these modules. Some of these are unique to Cinnamon. I think the applets, extensions, online accounts, and there might be a couple more in there that are unique to Cinnamon. And similar with mouse and touchpad, I've got the mouse settings or your touchpad settings, and disable touchpad while typing, things like that. Nice little touches there in Cinnamon that I don't think you get in the other desktop environments. Cinnamon's pretty much the premier or the flagship edition of Linux Mint. It's the one they probably put the most work into, and I must say it actually does look fairly nice here on my desktop. It just, when I start the machine, it looks a little bit better than the Mate or XFCE edition. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just actually looks a little bit better on the screen. Of course, your experience may be different. I'll have a quick look at the Cinnamon File Manager. It's called Nemo. This has the ability to split the screen into two panes by pressing F3. So now if you've got some files over here and you want to put them into another directory, you can easily manage that. And you get a nice view of both at the same time there. You can also, by pressing Ctrl-T, you can have extra tabs across the top. We can just have the tabs if you prefer that. So it's quite flexible as well. Another nice touch of Cinnamon is hovering over these running applications on the panel. We get a little preview of them there, or if we hover over them with the mouse, we'll get a little bit better preview. We can close them from there. We can also right click and go close all. If we look at the Firefox icon down in the panel, we can see the green background slowly moving across to the right, indicating that I'm downloading a file and showing the progress of such. It's basically showing us the same thing we're looking at up here on the browser. So if we've got the browser minimized and we're doing something else, we can just glance across at that and see whether the download is completed or not. Progress is just about finished there on Firefox, and it's complete. We've got some updates available here, so I'll click on the Update Manager. We'll install the updates. See the little progress bar moving across the icon on the panel, giving an indication of, there it goes there, little green background is moving across. So if you're doing something else at the time, you've only got to glance down at the panel to get an indication of what's going on there. And of course we can close that by clicking on there as well. Most of the applications installed will be the same across the three different desktops, with the exception of, like we saw with the system settings, and the available modules in there, that sort of thing. But if you actually look into these sound and office, internet and whatever, I'm pretty sure they'll be the same across the three different desktops. Let's have a look at old mate, the Linux Mint Mate desktop. We can see here it says Linux Mint 19.3 Mate, and of course this is still in beta at the time of recording. Once again, I've installed HTOP, and we can see up near the top here 1 and 2, showing the 2 cores, the 8 GB of memory. We can see we're using very little of the CPUs, and we're using nearly 460 megabytes of memory, whereas Cinnamon was using about 640. Running the system monitor side by side with HTOP, we can actually see the CPU count is quite low, or the percentage of the resources being used, compared to the experience that we had in Cinnamon. However, the memory disparity is approximately the same. We're showing 720 on the system monitor and only 470 on the HTOP application. The system monitor in Mate has 4 tabs across the top. These 3 are pretty much the same as what you saw in Cinnamon. However, this one has this extra tab called System, and it just shows you a little bit of information about your system. We'll have a look at the Mate menu. We can see it's a light colour compared to Cinnamon was a dark background. We're currently in our favourites, and we can click here and get all applications. There's no auto scroll in Mate, so we have to either use the mouse wheel or scroll manually with the scroll bar. In the Mate menu, we can right click, add to panel and desktop, similar to Cinnamon. We can also drag and drop straight to the desktop, which we couldn't do in Cinnamon. If we want to add something to our favourites in the menu, we can go to all applications, and for example the system monitor, I can right click that, show in favourites, and go back to favourites, and there it is there. Let's have a look at the control centre in Mate. Once again, we've got quite a few modules in here to manage our system with. The ones that were unique to the Cinnamon desktop are obviously not in here, but we've probably got a few different ones, such as Qt5 settings, the Compis settings manager, and whatever else may be different there. For example, if we look at our mouse settings, there's no touchpad options like we had in Cinnamon. And as a comparison, if we show the appearance, there's quite a number of single-click pre-configured themes that we can choose from in here. So we're currently on a fairly light theme, and if we click on this one here, we'll go to a dark theme. Everything's gone dark. Or we can click back with a single click again, and everything's light again. If we want to customize any particular area, we can click customize, and we've got options in here for pointers, icons, window borders, and the controls. And I can undo all that by just clicking back onto the default one there, and we should be back to square one again. If we open a couple of these up, such as the power management, you can see it looks quite a bit different than the Cinnamon setup. A couple of tabs across the top with our options and so forth there. A little bit more older style, shall we say, more traditional. Have a look at another one. Windows, same thing, we get a couple of tabs with some various options across the top. And the same, for example, if we hit keyboard, same situation, we get our tabs across the top with our various options. Nothing too fancy, but it gets the job done. Cinnamon's got all the latest features, bells and whistles and so forth, but this old dog's still got a few tricks up its sleeve. If we come into desktop settings and windows, we can change the window manager to Compiz. And we get our effects such as wobbly windows and so on. We can also configure that up quite a bit if we come into the Compiz settings manager, and we can activate the viewport switcher there, for example, and now we have our desktop cube as well. There's a ton of settings in here. You can spend days and days in there playing with all that, and I've done videos on it. If you look back through the channel, you should see some videos for that. We'll have a quick look at the file manager in the Mate desktop. This one's called Kaja or Haja. What is it about all these hard to pronounce names in Linux? Go to full screen. Once again, we can press F3 and have two independent panes to work from. So if we've got something over here and something over here, once again we can manage to see both panes at the same time there, makes it easy. The difference in this one is each pane has got its own navigational buttons directly above it, whereas in the Cinnamon one there was only one over to the side, and I actually think this one works a little bit better myself than Cinnamon, but that's my personal opinion there, of course. We can also press Ctrl-T and get extra tabs, the same as we could in Cinnamon. And we have the ability, if we want to bookmark something, we can just go to that folder, click bookmarks, add a bookmark, and there it is. And we can even rename that or remove it if we no longer want it. If you want to see the full path, you can click on this icon up the top, and there's the full path. Or clicking that again will return you back to the button view. Once again, you'll find pretty much the same applications installed on this desktop as we saw on Cinnamon, and that we're going to see shortly on the XFCE version. And finally we come to XFCE. Once again, I've installed HTOP. We can see XFCE is only using 440 megabytes. The system monitor in XFCE is actually called the Task Manager. We'll run them side by side again. It's currently showing memory as percentage. If we click up here, show memory usage in bytes. And now we can see, once again, we have the disparity. It's showing 512 versus 450. And we can see the CPUs are pretty much just ticking over there once again. See, the Task Manager doesn't have the tabs or whatever. That's pretty much how it is there. There's a few settings you can change and whatnot in it. We'll look at the XFCE menu. And once again, we should find pretty much the same applications in here that we found across the other two desktop environments, with, of course, exceptions for the specifics for this particular system. This menu can actually be resized. You can drag and drop to the desktop to make a desktop shortcut, and you can also right click, add it to favourites or the desktop or the panel by doing that. We'll look at the system settings. As you can see, the settings panel looks quite a bit different. There's perhaps less modules in here. Once again, we'll have a look at the appearance. You can see we're on MintY, so we'll go MintY Dark. And now we have the dark theme happening across the system. Go back to the default, and there we go back. We'll go back to all the settings. XFCE also has, if we look in desktop settings, we can change from that one there, the default, to Compiz, the same as we did in the Mate desktop, and we can get all the Compiz special effects there as well. And we can get to the settings manager, configure Compiz, and again we can select the viewport switcher and get our desktop cube and do all those flashy things that we want to do in Compiz if that's the way you want to go. This one says mouse and touchpad. I don't have a touchpad, so I don't know if that'll turn up if you have a touchpad on your system. But all the basic stuff will be in there. We'll have a look at the file manager. This one's called Thuna. There's no option in XFCE to split the screen or to get the extra pane. However, you can still Control T and have extra tabs if you want to do that. XFCE's file manager doesn't have a search function, so you'll need to use Catfish, which is pre-installed on the system. And I've got one called Car in there somewhere, and there it is. It's showing me it's in Documents. So if I go and look in Documents, there it is there. No frills out of the box while still being functional. Ideally suited to lower end or low spec hardware. The ability to be customised. XFCE still makes a great choice. 3 desktop choices from Linux Mint. They're still in beta at the time of this recording. Hopefully the stable versions will be available before the end of 2019. And in the meantime, you can download these and spin them up on a virtual machine like what I've done, or put them onto a USB and test them out on your hardware, see which one you like, which way you think you might want to go. Either way, whether you go Cinnamon, Mate or XFCE, they all make good choices, and there's lots of reasons you might prefer one over the other. And it's all about choice with Linux.